And I'm just going to share my screen. I actually have the sprint challenge up, a blank version of the sprint challenge. Nothing is solved. So we can go over specific problems that you guys struggle with and so on for the first half. And then the second half, and it might run over. We might spend 40 minutes on the JavaScript portion and like 20 minutes on what you're guys going to see in the intro to React section. I figured I'd bring some React in and we'll play with that a little bit too if we get time. So it ought to be a fun hour while you're waiting for your the mentor interview stuff to happen. So let's get started. And I'll share. So everybody should be able to see a VS Code window and a little tiny browser window. This is the sprint challenge. And it looks like the first topic I had here was to go over the map problem. Now, everybody pretty much at this point understood, go over the README, follow the steps in the README, do the challenge. Everybody understands how to use live server and inspector code on the browser, right? We're all good there? Cool. Well, I get this thing fired up and we'll see what it says here. We're gonna go live. It should, of course, it didn't do it right. So let's dispose of that. And let me make sure I'm in this one. Right click. And we're gonna open with live server. There we go. So we got this open, inspect it, go to the console, and this is where we see our answers. And you can see there's some things console logged in here already, like I'm inside the function, I'm outside the function. That was part of the closure problem. What we're gonna go over first, it looks like, is we got a question about the .map problem. So that's in the arrays callbacks. So let's take a look at that. Oh, I got somebody that needs to come in. Let's take a look at that. Can everybody see my screen fine? Is anything too small? Does anything need to be zoomed out? Everybody good?
Right. Yeah, it looks good.
Cool. All right, let's find our .map problem. Which one was it? Filter map. Okay, here we go. Request to .map. I believe that's Command Z or Option Z. Yeah, there we go. By the way, if you ever got a small window and you want the text to wrap for you, Option Z or Alt Z on a Windows machine will make the text wrap in your IDE so you don't have to scroll side to side to see what's going on. It just looks a little funny right here because you'll see gaps in the lines of code. So we'll go .map. It says the zoos need a list of all their animals' names, animal name only, converted to lowercase. Using map, create a new array of strings named lowercase animal names. Each string should following this pattern. Jackal, Asiatic, log the results. All right, so that is this one right here. So they give us a const lowercase names, but they don't assign it to anything. It's like unassigned. What can somebody tell me about map? What does map do that's special, that makes it like a special loop?
It returns a new array.
Correct. So we can just set that equal to where zoo animals. So we'll set that equal to zoo animals .map. So now our new array that's going to get returned from this function is automatically going to be assigned to this lowercase animal names. So that way when we console log it, we'll see it there. And what makes a map function make sense to me is I always think about it as every one of these array methods is like a for each loop. And that for each word just seemed to trigger in my brain. So in this callback function that's inside here, I try and say, for each item of this array, I'm going to do something. And it's going to, it's going to return the result of whatever I tell it to do. So I am classic for inside of this callback using the word item as my parameter. So right here, I'm going to say for each item, which this item right here, that parameter represents each object in this array. So item is the equivalent to one of these. And we could do things here. We can, we could change names, we can add names, we can, grab the population. We can get all kinds of different things out of this. So let's see what it's asking us for the name to lowercase. All right, and it wanted something else, Asiatic, which I believe is okay, that's part of the name. Okay. So we are going to target, let me scroll back up here to this data, this animal name key in each object. So if we check it right now and we just said return item. So item represents each object in an array, and I'm going to say animal name. And let's console log that and see what we get. All right, so we're going to lock up because we're missing some stuff here. I got to fix this. So I'm going to comment out that. That one's set equal to something. Anytime you see something in JavaScript that has a let or a const and doesn't equal something, it will break the code. So you won't see the console log. And now we're seeing the console log. And if you look here, this is a little small. Let me, oh, that's not it. If you can see when I open this up, I just got an array of all those names because that's what I told it to do. I said for each item in that array, I just want to return that item animal name into a new array. So it's going to sit there and build an array with just those animal names in it. Now, the one last thing that it said in the directions is it wants us to put it all in lowercase. And JavaScript gives us a real easy method to do that, and that's called toLowercase. So if we just chain that to the end, .toLowercase, it will return all those names in lowercase. And that's the map problem. Any questions? Going once, going twice. No. All right. Cool. All right. What's next? Who wants? What else you guys want to see about the sprint? Anything that was confusing to you? Anything? I know when I did this, the closure callback method threw me through a loophole for a while. I thought that was the hardest part of it. So yeah. Anybody?
Yeah, that was my basic downfall, was the closure. That's what I'm interested in seeing.
Okay, you want to check out closures? Cool. Let's do that. We'll go to that one next. All right. Now here's the closures, and we're going to text. Okay, so the first one they do is they define like a closure for you here. It's kind of weird. It says, study the code below and explain in your own words why nested function can access the variable internal. So basically what they're saying is how can this function access this? And that's the theory of closure and scope. So basically, anything that's inside of a function is considered to be inside of the function's scope. And what closure allows you to do is a function can reach outside of itself and get another variable. It can get any variable outside of itself. But a function cannot reach into a nested function and get a variable. So basically what that means is I am terrible at drawing, but I might make an attempt at annotating this. So let's see how that works out. Yeah, blue, that'll work. All right, so we got this outer function right here, this my function. Now, if something was living on the global scope, which external is, inside of this function where I say console log external right here, I can do that because I can reach outside of this function and get something. Now, this nested function, where it's console logging internal, it's doing the same thing. It's reaching outside of itself to grab this. But if I went to and did, let me stop the annotation. But if I went and did something in the code here, like inside of my nested function here, if I made a new line here and I said console log, actually wrong spot. Give me a minute. Let's do it in here. So if I do a new line right here, I am inside the my function scope, but I am not in the nested function scope. Wait, this isn't working either. I am losing you guys, ain't I? Okay, so we got that one, we got that one. Let's do it out here. If I wanted to do out here, I wanted to do a console log. Let me clear those annotations. There we go. Oh. Yeah, I am terrible with this. I'm not good at drawing with the mouse or making it work. But like if I was outside here on the global scope and I wanted a console log internal, if I wanted to do that, it's not going to work because I can't reach inside of a function to get it. That is not part of the global scope or the scope out here. So that's actually what's considered a closure at that point, because it's closing it in. But the scope of it is being able to reach outside. It's almost like, I always think of it as you can always reach out to get something, but you can never reach in. And that's scope and closure. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Did you kind of get that one?
Yeah, I understand that a bit.
Okay. And that's basically what it's telling us there. And the other part of this was the counter function. Do you guys want me to go over that too? Or everybody good with that?
No, definitely go for that one. Definitely.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, we're going to build a counter. So it says create a function called summation that accepts a parameter and uses a counter to return the summation of that number. For example, summation 4 should return 10 because 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. All right, so let's go ahead and build that out. Sounds like fun. Well, we're going to create a function. We'll call function summation. And summation is going to take in a number. We'll just call it num. And it's going to do something with that number and return it. So here it takes in that parameter, which we got as num. And it's going to return the summation of that number. Now, going off of what you guys know thus far, how do you think we would attack this? What does that number 4 look like it's telling us? It's almost telling us like we got to run some kind of loop 4 times, right? Or if it was 5, we'd have to run it 5 times or 6 times, kind of like that, to get it to, easily do the math that we're looking for. So let's write that. We'll say let total equals 0. And this is just going to be a placeholder. I use that a lot. I'm going to use this to accumulate my total. This is eventually what I'm going to return. This is going to be my end value. So now I'm going to write a for loop. I'm going to say for let I equal 0, I is less than number or less than or equal to number, I think is what we need for this. And then I'm going to increment it. So I'm going to create a for loop now. And this for loop, what it's going to do, why did it not like that? What's wrong with that? Oh, yeah, it's been a while. Semicolons in a for loop. There we go. All right, so in here, this is where we're going to do our math, and we're going to build in that total. And all we're going to do to accumulate that total is I starts at 0, right? Well, when I runs to the next one, it's going to go to 1. When it goes to the next one, it's going to go to 2. When it goes to the next one, it's going to go to 3. It's actually going to give us that number that we need to add is going to be I. So we can get this by saying total plus or equal I. So when this loop runs the first time at 0, it's going to add 0 to it. When it runs the next time at 1, it's going to add 1 to it. And when it runs the next time at 2, it's going to add 2 to that 1. When it runs again at 3, it's going to add 3 to that whatever total's there. And it's going to go so on and so forth. And I should have wrapped this in a function, but because that's what it's asking for. So we're going to say function counter. Okay, we're going to create a function called counter that's not going to take in any value. And that's where this for loop is going to run. Like so. So that's your function counter for the directions. So it's going to accumulate that total. And this is the same thing. I can reach out and grab this because of scope and closure, but I won't be able to go in and count it. Now, the problem here is to do this, we have to invoke that function. So we're going to say counter here. We're going to say counter run. And then after counter runs, we're just going to return the total. Oh, what just happened? All right, there we go. And at that point, that should work. So now all we have to do is invoke this function. So I'm going to say console log. I'm going to console log the summation function. And I'm going to give it the number. We'll give it the number from the example 4, just to make sure we got it right. And you can see it gave us 10. And if we give it 5, we should get 15. And we do. We get 15. And if you wanted to see how this works, you could take, and as this increments total, we could say console log the total and watch it run through each step. So now we'll see the console log run each time as it goes through. And you can see it starts at 0, then it gives it 1, and then it adds the 2 to the 1. That gives us a 3. Then it adds the 3 to the 3, gives us 6. Then it adds this 4 to the 6, gives us 10. Do you see how that was working? And that's what they were expecting you to do with the counter, is to create a function counter inside of the function summation, and then invoke it and return the total. So hopefully that helped and didn't confuse you guys too much. Am I getting a thumbs up? Am I doing all right so far? Everybody getting it? Cool. All right. All right. Next topic. We still got plenty of time on this. So anything else? Anybody else got? Oh wait, I see one in the thread. The reduce problem. Oh, reduce is a good time. I have a serious love-hate relationship with the reduce problem. But on a lighter note, you're not going to use it very often. So if you do struggle with the reduce problem, it's okay. It's not that big a deal, but we will go over that as well. So let's go back into arrays and callbacks. So let's do the reduce. So reduce is right here, where they give us a population total of 0. And what they want us to do is zoos need to know their total animal population across the United States. Find the total population from all the zoos using the reduce method. Remember, the reduce method takes 2 arguments, a callback, which itself takes 2 arguments, and an initial value for the count. So they give us a let here. That's kind of a little teaser on how to do it. And let's write this out. So real quick, let me ask you a question. Does reduce return a new array? Getting
yes, just to what you reduce it to.
Exactly. So let's use that. We're going to say let population total equal zoos, or zoo animals. I'm sorry, zoo animals dot reduce. All right. So this is where our answer is going to end up. Now the reduce takes the first function as a callback. So let's just go ahead and put that in play right here. We got our callback as our first argument. Our second argument is the initial value of where you want it to start. And almost every time you're going to use this reduce method, it's going to be 0. You're going to want to start it at 0. And if you forget to put that 0 in, it does weird things and it never gives you the right answer, but doesn't break per se. So that's one of those things you want to try not to forget, is putting that second starting value in there. Like if we wanted to start our count at 1,000, like we had a, let's say we had a different data set that already had a total to it, and we want to add to that. And we already knew what that was, and we already had like 1,500 of a total population in here. We could put that in there, and that's where it would start. It would take our total and add to that and return us the grand total. But most of the time, it's going to start at 0. So we have our callback and so we have our 2 arguments, callback and our starting count. Now this takes in two parameters, and I always get them backwards. One of them is the accumulator, which I believe is the first one. And the next one is the item that you're messing with. So this would be like kind of like I did up here, where that represents each item in the array. That's what this one's going to represent, each item in the array. The accumulator is the total value from 0. That's going to accumulate for you in that callback. So we're going to go ahead and write this out. So we're just going to return the accumulator. That's what we want to add to our parameter coming in. That's starting at 0, and we're just going to build that, fill that bucket up until the loop's done. Whatever that total number is going to be in our array. We're going to say that's going to plus equal our item for each item in the array, for each one of those objects, item dot population, I believe it is. Population should be an integer. I want to check, because if it's a string, sometimes it will act funny, but it is an integer, so we are good. So just by doing that, we should have that accumulator done and ready to go, and our population total should be this accumulator value after it runs. Let's see if we got it right. And I'm not seeing it in the log anywhere. I must have did it wrong. What'd I miss? Return accumulator plus equal. So let me go back into closure. Just clean this up a little bit. All right. Got my arrays callback there. I missed something. What did I forget to do? Console population total. Am I even showing 54? Why is this not working? Let's try and see if it's even hitting that line. Hey, show me hey. Oh, hey's not working either. Uncaught error, low population animals. Okay, so we're hitting an error on line 44. Yeah, that's why it's not showing up. A little live debugging there. So now let's console log our population animals. This is why it's kind of important you go in order, right? And if you look, we got the total 56, which should be the answer. And that's it. It's just an accumulator. I'm probably going to butcher this name, so if I do, I'm sorry. Is it Rhiannon? Is
Yeah,
that
that's right.
All right. Cool.
It's Rhiannon. Did you, so when you say callback on line 51, are you talking about the parentheses accumulator, comma, item, and parentheses bit?
Yep, that is basically a callback. So think of
Okay.
A callback is a function that actually reduce is considered the callback, but
Right.
it's a function that takes a function as an argument, and that's what all these array methods are. If you look, every
Okay.
one of them take a function as an argument. So I just
Right.
call it a callback. It's the first
Oh, okay.
argument basically is a function.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. All right.
One question on reduce. When you use that reduce, because it does loop back through each time, do you have to do plus equal each time, or is just plus?
Plus might work. Truthfully, I don't know, but that's a good experiment. Let's try it. Nope, plus works too. Just old habits never die.
It's good habit, though. Good habit.
So yeah, you could just add it right to it because that accumulator should not mutate. So yeah, working plus would do the same thing. But and if this was, reduce is the hardest one, and if it was confusing to you, you're not alone, and don't feel bad. You're not going to use it often, and if you're like me, every time you do have to use it, like go back to a previous project or Google it to see the implementation again. Because I do it all the time. It's like, oh, I gotta do reduce. All right, let me go look up at how I do that again. All right, there's that one. Next, what do we got? Anybody else? Anything on the sprint? Going once, going twice. Maybe. All right. Well, I guess we're done with that. Who wants to see some React? Say, I do. All right, cool. I've got a little React thing spooled up here. Let me get it running. In fact, we'll minimize this one. We'll bring this one over. This is a React app, basically. So what I'm going to do is, when you get started with React, all of the initial boilerplate is going to be done for you guys. There is a thing called npx create React app that just builds everything up for you, so you can start writing React code. That's basically what I did to create this, and then just did some minor cleanup. But you guys really won't have to attack that until probably the second sprint of the new unit. So when you got a React app is, if you talk to like the hardcore React people, what's this look like to you guys right here? What kind of language does that look like?
HTML.
It's just HTML.
Yeah, and if you tell that to a hardcore React guru, they will lose their mind on you. That is not HTML. That is JSX is what it's called. To me, it's HTML and JavaScript. It works exactly the same, other than the component structure changes a little bit. Don't ever let that like deter you or get you down. But it is called JSX. It is like a library or a build off of JavaScript that allows you to write the HTML in JavaScript code, and then it turns around and renders it in JavaScript. And how React works is it runs on Node. And it uses Node's like package JSON structure to do this. And if you look at this package JSON file, this automatically gets created for you when you run a create React app. And this is what controls all of your JavaScript dependencies that are needed to run whatever application you built. And you'll be adding dependencies, multiple dependencies, depending on what you want to do. They add dependencies for state management, styling, animation libraries, all that stuff. You'll be installing NPM packages left and right to do what you want to do. There's even ones that they use quite often through the school and everything called Axios, which is a fetch API that is really good and simple to use and does a lot for you. This is basically where you tell it to install all that stuff. So like, let's say I wrote an application and I pushed it up to GitHub, and somebody else, another team member, wanted to work on that application. So they went and cloned the file down that I just put up. They got my whole repository that I just put up there. Well, how would they know what dependencies to install, right? They wouldn't without a file like this. So these are all the list of all the dependencies and everything you need to make my application work. So when you would clone it down, the first thing you would do after you clone it down is you run a program called, or a command called npm install. And what this is getting ready to do is it goes through this package JSON and it looks at these dependencies and it goes, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this. And it goes and gets all of them and installs them in this machine and creates a file called node modules. This is where the core functionality of all of these dependencies lives and tells it how to work. And if you look, node modules is gray because it's also in a file called gitignore, which gitignore does exactly what it says. It tells Git to ignore this stuff. We do not want to send this stuff up to GitHub and store it on our code repository, because that node modules folder is huge. There is like something like 65,000 files in that node modules folder. And you don't want that cluttering up your repository space. Like if you open this up, you can see the list. There is a lot happening in here to make this application work. So just keep that in mind. That's why it's there and that's why it's grayed out. And when you first clone down an application, you won't even see that until you run that command npm install. And it just goes through those dependencies and installs it. And then once you have that done, you can, as long as you have something to display on the screen, like right now, you look, I got an H1 that says hello React. To get your React app running, you just type in npm start. Oh, SPM start. That ain't gonna work, is it? npm start. And this is gonna start running some things, and you should see it start popping up in, of course, it goes to the other browser window, but I'll bring it over here and drop it on that. We got app says, hello React. Look, there's our H1. Exactly what we put in there. And you can change that. We say, hello, web24. All right, this is part-time 24, I'm sorry. Part-time 24, and save that. And when you save it, it'll automatically re-render for you. Just like live server, except it's doing it through the build command on React. And how that's working is in the package JSON, we give it what's called a script. And these script tags, npm watches, anytime we type in a command that says npm and it sees it in the script, like npm start is the one I just typed in. And it's gonna run a command called react script start. So it gets it from React and runs this application, spools it up on a local host on our machine. When you get into testing, you'll run npm test and it'll run whatever unit test you have in this built into the test files. Eject, you'll never have to worry about. And build is for deployment. Whatever deployment service you use runs that command for you. You never have to type that in yourself either. So, but they're there just for deployment purposes and everything else. Oh man, this cold's kicking my butt. But that's it. That's the basics of how this is starting to work. And what you guys are going to start going over next week is obviously React and React State. Let's see, the first unit, I believe, is just basics React, React State, React side effects, and passing props. So let's play a good example here. I'm going to go ahead and outside of this, I'm going to create a const, and I'm going to call this, we're going to call this students. And I'm going to set that equal to an array of objects. And I'm just going to start building an object that just has a name in it. And the name is going to be, I'm just going to start scrolling through people that have their camera off because I can see their names. I have SAEB, there's one. And I'm going to add another one. And I'm going to say name. Let's see, we're going to have a Daniel. We'll put like 5 of these in here. And I'm just creating an object basically of some data that you might get from an API. It's going to come back looking similar to this. You know, it's going to be an object of key value pairs. We got name Molly, and we'll do 2 more. Name. Let's see. Yeah, Mike. And one more. Name is going to be Jake. So we have 5 names here. We have some data, an object, basically an array of objects. And what we're going to do here is we're going to render these to the screen. We're going to start playing with them. So let's say I wanted to show all those names on my React app dynamically as this page loaded. All right. The first thing you would do is we would set them to state. And state is a really cool thing in React. React watches state to change. And whenever state changes, it renders new information to the page depending on that change. So you guys learned about the DOM, right? Document Object Model, the DOM, how browsers work. React takes a virtual copy of that DOM and it hangs onto it. And it constantly watches for stuff to change in our code as it dynamically acts with the user integration. And once it changes, it projects that out to the actual DOM in the browser. So it looks like it's a very fluid, multi-page, massive application if it's all working on a single page app. Nothing's ever changing. We're still working on the same browser window. Nothing's refreshing, nothing's reloading. This is constantly going. So to get access to that state, we have to got somebody coming in. We have to import. Why is it doing that to me? There it goes. We have to import things from React. And one of them is a hook called useState. We want to use the useState hook from React.
I don't have plus.
Bring that in. And then we're going to
have a mock interview. Right.
What was that?
Oh shit, my mic is on.
Yes, it is. All right. There we go. All right. So useState can take 1 or 2 outputs, as they say. And we'll set that by const, and it's normally a getter or a setter. So we're going to call this, we'll call this student, and we'll call the other one set student. All right. And we're going to set that equal to useState. And we're going to set useState to an empty array for now, because we're going to pretend that nothing's happened yet. We don't know what's going on. We have made no API calls. You know, the page just loaded. It has done nothing. The user hasn't told us to do anything, but we're going to watch that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and in here I use curly braces. When you use curly braces inside JSX, it allows you to write raw JavaScript code and return things and render it as JSX. So I'm going to use our favorite function. I'm going to say student, which I'm accessing this variable. Think about this as a variable, and this is a function. So the variable is the output of useState. The function is what you use to set that state. And you can set that state to a number of things. You can have a button, add a name, and it'll automatically add a name to that object and keep moving on. So we're going to use everybody's favorite method, map. When I said you guys are going to type map a lot, this is map. And I'm going to shorthand this because shorthand looks really cool. And I'm going to say map for each item in that. We're going to return an H3 with, and in here, I'll explain that after I type it, but I'm gonna use the item.name. So what's happening here is I'm writing a map. It's gonna return a new array. The difference is this is gonna return an array of JSX elements. And in our case, it's gonna return an array of H3 JSX elements. And it's gonna display them on the page with these curly braces inside here. Like if you look right here, I just typed regular text, right? And it showed up on the screen. Those curly braces, just like the outer ones, allow us to put raw JavaScript in there. And our raw JavaScript, I'm saying that this is gonna have a name key. And whatever that value is, that name, that's what I want to display out here. If I save this, you'll see it still has nothing. The reason it has nothing is because I haven't set the state to anything yet. So let's go ahead and remove this. And I'm gonna set it to the student's object. And there they are, all of them just displayed. And if you notice as I'm going through this, the page really isn't gonna be refreshing too much. So that's the use state hook. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so really cool, by the way. But the curly braces, they take away script then. Like if you were to do that like on like a, normal, JavaScript within like you're typing in HTML, then you use the script tag. But and this is called JSX?
Yep. Yeah, believe it or not, this whole thing is
JSX?
one giant script.
Oh.
Yeah, matter of fact, I could show you.
All
That's a good point. You bring that up. Let's check that out. So I'm going to go into this public folder that comes with like Create React App. Public is where the stuff that our browser uses lives. Like you'll see an index HTML in there. There's some favicon garbage that came with it, but let's take a look inside index HTML. That's what's like, that's what the browser shows, right? All right, it's got some links and some other things going on in here. It's got a title, React App. The title you can see is React App up here. And you'll see it says body, no script. You need to enable JavaScript to run this application. And then it has one div with an ID of root. And that is it. That is the whole HTML file. This div with the ID of root is where everything for React comes in. So as this thing fills up, as this runs, if I inspect this, you'll see. I'll even show you on the inspector. So if I inspect this and I go to elements, why am I on styles? Can I move that down? Yeah, get out of there. Okay, so here's our HTML elements. Okay, we got the body. You'll see the no script. You'll see the div ID root right there, right? We're going to open that up, and you can see all of a sudden, here's my div class app. And over here, that's what this is returning. It's div class app right inside that root. And then inside of that, we have our H1 with all of our H3s. Everything that we just told it to render, it's converting it to regular HTML. And the entry point of that is this root div. So everything as you build is going to end up living inside of that root div. And it runs that through, I don't believe it's considered a script in the HTML, but it's basically it's like a giant script. That's how the whole thing's running. It's just, shooting it all into that div.
So the dependencies that you were referring to earlier, that you said you had to run the npm install, which I understand that. Is that putting in the root for you, or are we going to have to put in the root manually ourselves?
No, it comes with anytime you run Create React App, it builds that for you.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is boilerplate. Like when you start a new React application, you get all this. Like the only thing I've added to this is code. Yeah, I've added nothing else. Everything else just came with the package.
It's just default.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. Which a lot of it I end up erasing. Like when you get into this app.js, where I got this right here, they had all kinds of stuff with like a spinning React logo and stuff when you first load this up. And it's just boilerplate, like, hello, you created a React app. I just, erase it. Oh, I want to build my own app. So.
Cool.
But yeah, that's how it's running. It's that's like the entry point into the page. And other than that, everything else runs JavaScript. Oh, let's see, what am I missing here? Just making sure I'm not missing any questions. Perfect. Cool. So let's play with this a little more with some other things we cover. We're kind of covering state right here. So I'm going to add a couple things into this real quick. I'm going to add under that Hello Web Part-Time 24, I'm going to give it an input. And I'm going to also give a button. And the button's name is going to be add. And what we're going to do is we're going to create the ability real quick to add a name to this list. Dynamically, just add a name. We want to be able to add a name to that. And how we're going to do that is we're going to do what they called controlling an input in JavaScript, which this I don't think you get to until like the second unit of React, but I could be mistaken. But we want to use another state. And I normally just go form, set form for this, because React needs to control everything. It needs to know what's happening all the time, so it knows how to render things to the page. And use state here is just going to be an empty string. And in this input, it takes what they call props. So the first prop we have is a value. Now the value I set equal to, and then open and close curly braces. This is what allows you to insert things into the HTML tag via JavaScript. Just those curly braces, you're going to see them all over the place. That's kind of what encapsulates that JavaScript into something. So in our value, we're going to say the value is going to be form. Now I could say this value could be a string, and I could say it's Noel. And if I do that, the value is always Noel. And if I click over here and type in there, I'm typing away, the value is not going to change. It's always Noel. We want to dynamically show that value based on our input to our form value. So we got that here. And of course, I typed them from. Look at that. All right, the other thing you want to do is they have another prop called onChange. So what onChange does is it accepts a function, or basically a callback, I guess you could say. And that means every time that something changes in that input, we're going to update state dynamically. So in here, I'm just going to put a little anonymous fat arrow function, and I'm going to say set form. And I'm going to set form to the e.target.value. So it's going to take the target, and I got to pass it the little e for the event. This is basically standing for the event, which you guys learned a little bit about events and stuff with the DOM. So the event being, an event is any user in their interaction, really, a key press, a mouse click, so on and so forth. So whenever this element's got focus on it, which it does right now, an event is me pushing 1. So it's saying that event target value update state. So now if I just take here, I'm just going to put a quick console log in here. And I'm going to console log that form value. So I'm console logging this form value of state, and we're going to inspect it. And we're going to take a look at it. Right now, it's nothing. So as I type in this, and you're going to see it'll dynamically change. So I'm going to start typing in Daniel. You see how that's working? And I'm even going to use the last name, Vasquez. With each key press, the state constantly changes. And believe it or not, you can't see it happening. It is re-rendering this page without refreshing. It's re-rendering to show that value in this input every key press. And that's called a controlled input in React. So that's some of the power that we're seeing. We're constantly monitoring key presses, code, user interaction with our application. And we're going to get a little bit further into that. Now let's say we type in a name and we want to add it. So we're going to create a function in here. And that's another thing that React you're going to get used to is fat arrow functions. And we're going to call this one add name. And it's going to be a fat arrow function. It's going to take in a name. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to set students, or set student to, we're going to, let's see, that's an array. So we want to spread out that array. Now you're gonna make me think about how I'm going to do this. It is an array, right? Okay. So we're going to spread out student. All right, and then we're going to add an object with a name field that is going to be that name that we send in. any questions on what I just did there? That was the spread operator and all kinds of stuff that I don't think you guys have covered.
Yeah. What are the dots?
That is called
Like,
a
why'd you?
that's called a spread operator, and you guys are going to live by that. It works on arrays and objects. And basically what I'm doing is, you know, right now this state here is this, correct? And if I decided I wanted to add something to that, how would I add something to an array? Normally you think you would append it
You'd
or
push
push
it
it.
Right?
Yeah. With React and the way it works, you can't just push that up to it. You have to create a new copy of it and set it to a new copy. So what the spread operator does is it says, take that student, which I'm getting that from right here, that student array of objects, and make a copy of it. And by make a copy of it, and they call it a spread operator, you're saying spread it out. I'm making a copy of it. And then the comma is me saying, I'm going to add an object to the end of that. And I'm going to add an object with a key of name and the value, whatever I add into this function. So it's calling our state setter with a new copy of the array and adding a piece to the end of it. And that's how that works with the spread operator. You can't just pop and push into an array in React. It won't function properly. It's got to see new copies.
Why does it be formatted like that?
Yeah. Which
Nice.
it's going to become second nature, and it's going to make your code look a lot cleaner. You're not calling push, pop, you know, you're not appending things. It's just 3 dots and a comma, and you're there. So it's pretty cool.
You said
once
that's
you get the
called
hang
a
of it.
spread operator?
Yep, spread operator.
I'll look it up.
So
Nice.
no problem. And now,
Yeah.
now we're going to add functionality to our button. We're going to have on click, which is another prop that you can put on any element in React. You can have an on click on an H1, you can have an on click on a div, and it's going to do exactly what it says. Anytime you click on that, it's going to run whatever code you put in here. So in our case, we're gonna make it a callback function, and we're going to run our add name. And our add name is going to take in the form value. So the current form value, if you remember, form is changing with each key press, correct? So if I type in the name Chris, this value is actually a string that says Chris. So when I click this add button, I'm going to say, I want to send that value of Chris into this function. And this function is going to say, oh, I see that. Let me spread out that, you know, let me go ahead and call my state set, you know, set that new state with a copy of the old state and add that name of Chris to the end. So let's see if it works. So we're going to back this out. We're going to refresh it so we got a clear terminal. And I'm going to try and add my name to the list. And click add. Bam. Just like that. No page refreshing, no nothing. It just fluidly runs. And you can add them over and over again, like Noel. Noel's in there now. Do that. But just remember that this value is only temporary while the code's running. So if I click refresh, they're gone. That's the whole point of not having the page refreshing. Refreshing is bad in React. You don't want that to happen as people are using your application. So that's kind of like controlled inputs. That might be a little teaser into the second week. But it does help show how state can be powerful. And the one other thing I want to go over with you guys is there's another hook that you're going to go over in the next unit, and it's called use effect. And use effect is a hook that allows you to manage side effects within a React application, something that's constantly running JavaScript. And it's most commonly used for whenever you have to make an API call, something third party, something outside of your code to get information. Like let's say this student's array here. Let's say that lived on a server somewhere in Ohio. And we wanted to go get that name, the current set of names, and display them in our application, and then create stuff to add or manipulate those names. You would use a hook called use effect. And use effect you bring in the same way you brought in use state. Just like, of course, I type use state again, right? And use effect is, this is going to be a little bit of a tricky one, because I guarantee a lot of you guys are going to hit API limits. You're going to have infinite loops. You're going to crash your computer a couple times as you learn how to use this hook, because useEffect runs based on dependencies is what it's called. And it's not dependencies like in package JSON dependencies. It's dependencies that you tell it to watch, like variables you tell it to watch. So we're going to start typing this hook out, and I'll explain it as I go. useEffect takes a callback as its first argument. So it's always going to look like this. The second argument is known as the dependency array, which I just put in there. If you forget that dependency array, when you run your application, it's going to run useEffect in an infinite loop. It's going to run it over and over and over and over again. So if you have an API call in here and don't have that array in there, it's going to sit there and bang that API until you hit the limit, or until your boss calls you up and says, hey, why do I have a $55,000 AWS bill? So just remember, the dependency array is very important. And when you leave it empty like this, that means it's going to run on the initial load of the app. When it sees the array and it's empty, initial render, it runs. So here we could actually say, we'll make the students an empty array again. So there's nobody there. And inside this useEffect, we're going to call that set students. And we're going to set it to student. So now this is going to run on the initial load. Well, it should. Why isn't it doing it? Is it because it's not? Oh, it's because I didn't put the S in there. There it goes. All right. So what happened here, and if I put a console log in here, you'll see, you can't see it with the naked eye. I'm a console log student. So, and save this, and you're going to see, you see 2 shots of that, didn't you? Let me actually refresh the page. You see what happened here? The first initial render of our page was an empty array, which we told it to. And then as the page loads, it sees this call and says, oh, I need to do that. And it actually has a second render that happens that sets the state to those 5 students. You don't see it because it's that fast, but this comes to happen. Think about if you had large data. This is where you get the ability of loading screens and things like that. Like, you don't want anybody to, go to your app and nothing happened but that little spinning thing in the top of the browser, right? You want them to stage up on your app, see like a fancy logo and maybe a big spinning circle as you load the data that way. That keeps people from clicking out of your app or thinking things are wrong. But this allows you to set that like the initial state of your app to be that loading screen. And then when the useEffect gets its callback, its promise back of everything, all the data, then it displays the application. So this is where the user experience starts coming into play, and really developing a fluid application is using things like useEffect and dynamically rendering things to the page to keep the user interactive while stuff is happening. Did I lose anybody on that one?
I kind of followed. Kind of makes sense.
And basically, this is everything you guys are going to cover for the next week to 2 weeks. There's one other thing called passing of props, and I can show you guys that. It's 8:30. We still got some time. If you guys got to bail, that's cool, because I know there was a meeting, I believe, on the schedule for you guys. If not, I'll show you how to pass props real quick if you guys want to see that too. So the other beauty of React is you're able to build very small pieces of application that are completely reusable in different areas of it. They're called components. You can build components that are like just for the button, like this this button right here can just be a component. Let's say I use that button in 7 different areas of my code. I only have to write it once, and I can just bring it in and use it wherever I want to. That's the beauty of React, reusable component structure. Writing, as the saying goes, keeping your code very dry. And what very dry it means is don't repeat yourself. You don't want to write the same code over and over again. You shouldn't have to do that. It's going to take up time and space, and it's overall bad practice. You want to just write, if you have to write it more than once, it should become a component basically. So we're going to build a component. We're going to start by making a little file structure here. I'm going to make a new folder called components. And this is where I'll keep all those components. And I'm gonna make one, let's make one for the names. We'll make a component for the names. So I'm gonna make a new file, and a React component always starts with a capital letter. And the file name should be the same. That's how it recognizes that it's a React component. So I'm gonna call this, oh, why is that over there? Type it here. I'm gonna call this name.js. So now I have a new file called name.js. And in here, I'm just gonna write a function. I'm gonna write the function called name. And this, I always try to make the file name match the function name. It makes it easy for importing and exporting these components at this stage. And this name is going to take in something called props as an argument. And we're going to have this return. And return on this is always done with parentheses. And they have what they call an anonymous JSX component, which is just open and close, less than, greater than signs. This allows you to render something to the page in React without having to type div. So we're going to return an h3. And in this h3, we're going to say that we're going to send it, we're not going to give it anything yet. We're just going to say name. All right, so that's all this does. And now we have to export it. So we have to export this function so it can be used elsewhere, and anywhere we import it in, we can use it. And it's, you know, it's very reusable at this point. So we're going to say export default and name. So now we're exporting this. We can go into our app component now, and we can import this. We can say import name from, and this is going to give us our little thing. We want to go into the components file and get name. Now we have it. And down here, where I'm doing my map and I'm returning this h3, instead of returning that h3, I'm just going to return that name component, like so. And now you're just going to see name everywhere. All right, now we have a reusable component in play. We're rendering a new component called name. But it's not very effective because all it says is name. We have to give this some data. So how you do that is a method called passing props. And what we're going to do is we're going to take, and we're going to know this, we know this item represents each item in this array, right? We're going to send one of those items in each one of these name components that we built. So I'm just going to say item equals item, like that. And just like that, I now pass the prop item into name. And item represents each one of these. So for the first iteration of that loop, I sent it the object name Jake or name Saeed. The second one I sent name Daniel. So each one of these is going to have that sitting there. And we can prove that out by going into our component here. That's now called props that we brought in. This is where that's living. And there's multiple ways you can do this. So first thing I'm going to do to show you is I'm just going to console log. I'm going to console log props. Let's see what we're getting, right? And I want to clear some of this out. Where's that other console log? Let's get rid of that. And you can refresh. I want to clear terminal. And you can see I got a console log 5 times for every time it rendered. And it says my props is an object called item. And inside item, it has an object called name with the string. So we have that. And now I can say, okay, instead of console log props, it's console log props dot item, because that's what I called it. And refresh that. And now we're getting our object name that we would see before to do that. Now we can do stuff with this now. Instead of name right here, I could put my curly braces in, and I can say, I want this to be props dot item dot name. And there they are, reusable component. We just wrote another function that lives completely somewhere else to do the same thing. And let's say we had a file somewhere else down our tree where, oh, I need that h3 name component. You don't ever have to write it again. You just type in that import command, pass it the data it needs, it automatically does it as long as your names line up. Like if you pass it the key item with the key name in it, It's going to work every time that you use it. And that's passing promise in a nutshell. Any questions?
No, it seems powerful.
Oh, it is, man. It gets ridiculous. That's why they dedicate 2 whole units to React, and truthfully they should have more. But it's kind of one of those, here's the main core of it, and learn the rest on your own. And I do recommend learning things on your own. I've learned a lot by myself. Like there's a whole other different aspect of React. Like who likes playing games and using applications on your phone? React Native. You can write native applications, stuff that can be downloaded from the App Store and Google Play in React. And it compiles to native code, to Swift, to Android's Kotlin. And you can sell those on the App Store.
Wow.
You write that all in React. But basically, it's React code. Like all this stuff is the same when you write that, except for the moment you type return. All this changes when you write React Native. And that's stuff that you have to go out and teach yourself. On a lighter note, the school is very good at teaching you how to learn. I found that out myself. I was like, there's no way I could soak all this in. And as I started going through the curriculum, about halfway through, I'm looking up random things. I taught myself how to, I built a couple React Native apps already. I liked it. Taught myself about 7 different state management systems goofing off when they only teach us one, really. They teach us Redux. I went and picked up Conflux and Recoil and just playing around with things and reading documentation. And where the documentation, when I first started, it looked like it was all written in Greek, all started to make sense. I'm able to read through the documentation and implement it and know what I'm doing. It's like, it's almost like the Matrix and Neo. They plug into the back of our neck and we'll wake up and go, I know Kung Fu. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys tonight. If nobody's got any questions or anything, I'll let you guys get back to it. If you do, fire away. What do you got?
I have no questions. I'm going to get off. I think my mentor is getting on. But thank you for your time.
No problem. And I'll post a recording on the channel when it gets done compiling. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
All right, you too.
All right, have a good one. See you later.